Hello, everybody, and welcome. I need to know if you can hear me, because if you can't, we have problems. So I'll wait until somebody lets me know that. There's no music today because of the fact that I have just tried to move my entire studio down the hall in 2 hours, and that was one of the things that didn't make it all the way down here. So sorry about that. You just hum it to yourselves will be the only way you can do it. Let me have a look, see if my Telegram thing's working, which it should be. So this was a hectic panic getting this done, but I really needed to be back here so that I could show you everything I want to show you today. Otherwise, it would have been kind of a little bit disjointed and disconnected. So, what we're talking about today is the Macro Studio, and this is really aimed for people who are relatively new to this, just getting started, and just trying to feel their way into this and don't want to spend a ton of money, but at the same time don't want to have a studio that isn't going to deliver decent pictures. Now, I have done all kinds of different treatments on this where we've talked about the highest of the high end stuff and the really uh, scraping by budget versions. This is going to be more focused on what I believe is important, not what looks cool or what you can do cheaply or anything like that. I'm going to focus on what is important in studio macro photography, and I'm going to show you everything about the way I would go about setting it up. Now, before I start that, a quick couple of mentions. We have a Pazoom this Saturday. If you're a member of Patreon, you get to come. That's a 2 hour live event where we're actually on a call together, so we get to actually yell at one another. That's on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. We're talking about the end of the season, how to get the most out of the conclusion of your summer and fall, and how to get ready for the winter, that type of thing. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a lot of other things to talk about as well. Those of you who shared my concern about Patrick, he's been under the weather with a little bit of, well, a big bit of some kind of nasty respiratory flu that was going around. He's making a prompt recovery, and I've been in touch with him, and so he'll be back. And I think we are buffering. It looks like it anyway. I don't know if that is something you're experiencing. I have a feeling somebody's going to tell me in a minute if we are. But I'm going to get cracking right away with this, and we'll just figure out the tech stuff as we go. By the way, one last thing: I did release the video on the Castel M this morning at 2 o'clock when I finally got everything put back together. So if you have a chance, do watch that. I think it'll be useful information for you, even if you're not in the market for a rail, because I give a whole tutorial on how to do macro field stacking. And yeah, so there's a lot of information in it. I think you'll enjoy it. Please forgive me if I don't recognize you, because I don't even know you're there today. I'm working off one small laptop screen. I have no knowledge of who's out there. I can't see your comments, and I won't see any comments that don't get passed on to me by Alistair or Bud or Amy. I don't think Amy's here today, but yeah, my monitors are going to be dealing with, moderators are going to be dealing with all of that. So chat with them. If you ask a question and I don't get around to it because I have a lot to talk about, we'll talk about it offline. I'll get in touch and I'll answer your questions. If they are questions that are pertinent to what I'm talking about today, I will be interrupted to answer those questions. And if you super chat me, I, I'll cancel the whole thing to answer your questions, okay? Because I'm that way inclined. This morning, during the move down the hall, I tipped over, not, I didn't tip over, I tipped something over and dropped 4 feet to the floor a an 8 terabyte hard drive. They don't bounce, and there's something shaky inside of it now that clacks around. That, my friends, is my entire video archive. So, yeah, bad day in the studio. So, what is important in macro photography? Well, there are several things, and each of these is as important as the other in its own way. You can't have consistently good macro photographs unless you pay attention to all of these areas, or each of these areas. It sounds a bit daunting when I say all of them. And what I'm going to do is I've got a clean slate here today because of the fact that I am in between builds. I actually am building 3 separate rigs at the same time to do 3 different things. But as that construction is underway, I had one of my surfaces was completely free, and I thought perfect opportunity to do this. And with a little bit of luck, or a big bit of luck maybe, we'll actually have a camera view of that surface, and we do, which is fantastic. We actually possibly could have another view of it, and we do, and it looks like I have sound on both of them. That's fantastic. So this is the surface that I'm going to be using. Now, it's the first condition, and probably, well, I won't keep saying that because they're all important, but you have to have a surface to work from that is going to limit the possibility of vibration. Now, that can be a countertop. It can be a heavy wooden table with braced legs. Preferably, though, it's going to be a solid piece of furniture, a piece of furniture that has sides that go all the way down to the floor. Now, what I do personally, this is the base of everything I do, is the piece of furniture or the homemade thing I put it on. And I found the best way to do it is to just go to your local thrift shop, which, by the way, I am working on getting permission to go film a video at my thrift shop before it opens so that I don't accidentally film people. So that will be fun. If they let me do it, it'll be a blast. Anyway, I look for pieces of furniture like the one I'm going to show you in just a second, or for that matter, like the one I could show you right at this exact second. No, it doesn't show it, but it's a bedside type thing. It's about 100 years old, and it's like a solid block of wood. It's immobile, immovable, and it doesn't wobble from corner to corner. I'm getting dings, so excuse me for just a second while I figure out what I'm being dung about. Volume's a little low. And hollow, can you boost the volume slightly? No, I cannot. I can't do anything with the sound. You'll notice that I'm wearing a wireless mic that I somehow, don't ask me how, got it to work with my Mac, but it only works at one volume, and everything I press seems to just make it worse. I'll try pressing this button now. Is that any better? My levels look okay here, so I'll just talk loudly. Okay, so the bass. The thing that I was going to show you, if I got to the camera properly, was no, that doesn't show it either. This will show it. Nope, that doesn't show it. Yes, it does. The brown thing there. It's just a gigantic block of heavy wood onto which I can put the rest of my stuff. Now, the thing on top of it, the thing you can see, is it's hollow. It's a box, but it's made of MDF, medium density fiberboard, and it weighs about, I don't know, 60 pounds, that thing does. It's 1 inch thick walls, so it is a very, very immobile box. I don't know what it's made for. I found 2 of them at the thrift shop and bought them both. So it's a nice, it lifts it up to where I can work comfortably at the table. I don't like working low. So in the past, you'll have seen my rigs are either on a sturdy table that's been raised up off the ground, or it's on a sturdy table with something else to raise the platform off the ground. This is very stable. It doesn't wobble. And I also position it carefully in the room. That's another thing that's a must do. Find the part of your room, the part of your house, wherever you are thinking of setting your center of operations up. Find a place that doesn't have springy floors. And if you want to know exactly when you found the right place, if you have an iPhone, get the app called Physics Essentials. It's free, I think, or $1 or something like that. And in it is an accelerometer, a 3-axis accelerometer that you can put on your stand wherever. I would show you, but my phone's busy filming. But you could put it on your stand where you plan to put your base of operations and then jump around on the floor. And it will register when you are vibrating the phone. And it's very sensitive, very sensitive. It automatically adjusts the scale. So you can actually use this thing to get a very quiet platform. And it's going to be where the floor supports are or up against a wall support. You just have to figure it out for your house. If you are married to a structural engineer, ask them. They're good at this kind of thing. They do it for a living. Once you have your base, you're going to need a surface on which to work. Now, so far, the most important thing was a base that didn't vibrate. Now, we need a surface that is flat. A surface that is not flat is both going to knock your photography out of alignment, and second, it is going to be a setup for vibration, because if the piece of wood or metal that you're using is curved or bent at all, then two of the corners are going to be coming up, two of the corners are going to be going down, and the thing will rock from side to side. You cannot afford to have that. So you need to have something that is flat as well as heavy and stable. Now, in order of preference, the best thing that you can get is an optical surface, an experimental surface. It's not experimental, it's for doing experiments on. A sheet of aluminum or a blob of a block of aluminum, blimey. Yeah, a nice half-inch thick plate of aluminum with holes drilled in it that are tapped for the kind of screws and bolts you use would be ideal. But they're expensive, very expensive, and out of most people's budget. Something that I have found to be just as good is countertop material, either granite or marble or anything that you can get from the place that makes the countertops. The problem with this is they make the countertops and they cut the pieces off, and they used to just basically give them to you, give you the extras. They caught on to the fact that macro photography is a thing, and now when you go in, they want to charge you $200 for a piece of stone, even without drilling any holes in it. So that's probably not as good a deal as it used to be. The next thing that is a good deal is if you can find an outlet that is selling butcher blocks. Butcher blocks are pieces of composited hardwood that are glued together, and that's important that they're glued together, and then they're flattened using a planing machine. So they're very true surfaces, and they don't move over time. The next best thing after that would be MDF, medium density fiberboard. If you keep that inside, it's very heavy, very dense. It doesn't bend or arc. If it gets damp or wet, it swells up, and that's a problem. So you have to be very careful. I would cover it with a waterproof coating. Next after that would be a heavy duty piece of plywood, which costs about as much as countertop material these days. 1-inch plywood is so expensive, you'd think it was made of gold, but that is a very stable surface, and it also looks pretty. So a nice piece of plywood. The last thing, and the one that I put at the bottom of the list, is just a piece of wood. A lot of people will do that. They'll grab a piece of pine, untreated pine, and make that the base for their rail. This stuff does move over time, and as it dries, it'll curl and curve, and it changes a lot, visibly changes. And if you have a big plank of it, the whole plank will warp, and it'll pull screws out of the base that it's in. So that's the order in which I do things. Now I'm going to put a piece of wood on top of the big base. So we've got the table and then the base wood. Let me show you what one of them looks like, because it's important that you kind of have an idea what I'm talking about here. This is typically what I will use. And this is a very heavy piece of jungle hardwood. It's actually mahogany, which I got at a shop in a big town that had these on sale. It's not completely flat, but it will be when I get finished with it. I'm going to finish one side of it, but it is very dense, very heavy. Now, I have another one set up on my horizontal rig. Oh, jeez. The one that's set up on my horizontal rig, you may be able to see, is much thicker. That's 2 inches thick. It's not a very good wood. It's actually a very cheap wood. It's called jungle rubber wood or something, but it's easy to work, and it's fairly solid, and it stays flat. I've been happy with it. So you've got your base, and onto that base, you need to have two things. You need to have a way to hold your camera and lens so that it is flat and straight and pointed where your subject is going to be. There's another thing it has to have. It has to have enough room on it that you can take pictures with a macro lens from 1 to 4, say. So 1/4 life size. That's way back. That's 3 or 4 feet back. And you also need to be able to take pictures at the minimum focus distance, which is 12 inches. But if you are planning on doing more magnification later on, if you're planning on buying an objective or buying a bellows or an EL Nikkor enlarger lens or something, you're going to be using systems that are much longer than this, using much smaller increments of movement, but you're going to need to still have the end of that lens much closer to the subject. So there are two things you need to do on paper before you do anything else. You've got your base, you've thrown a butcher block down on top of it, and you're ready to put something on there to hold your camera or hold your quick release plate on your camera. Now, the thing I recommend you do is grab a piece of square lined paper. This is the stuff I use. I love this. I buy pads and pads of it, and just it's wonderful to think with. What you need to do is measure your camera height from the base of the camera to the optical center where the light's going to be passing, and any other equipment that you have that you plan to use. For example, a rail. You're probably going to want to mount it on a rail so that it can quickly be moved forward and backward by large amounts if you change lenses. So a rail, something like this, would need to be in the mix. I recommend double Arca Swiss rails like this that have an Arca Swiss on the top and the bottom. You'll see why in a minute. And these add height. So you need to add this to your camera. Then if you're going to use an automated rail or a manual rail to do focus stacking, which is why you're building this thing, you need to add the height of that. And get in touch with me if you want to know the heights. I measured them and I had them on a piece of paper and then I lost it. But they're all different heights. The stack shot can be configured several different ways and it changes the height. The Wii Macro is very tall. And the Novaflex Castell is very, very low profile, which is great. But you need to measure all of that and get a feel for how high off the butcher block is your optical center, because your optical center is where your subject will be. Makes sense, right? So you need to know before you start hammering things, how much height do you need to have for your specimen? Because by the time you add a bellows, a rail, a base block, and the camera, your camera can be up here. It can be this high off the table. We want to keep it as low as possible, but now you're going to need some way to get the specimen up to that height and still be able to manipulate the specimen so that you can change its position. Now, I heard a rumor that there would be at some point in the relatively near future some very handsome gentlemen who are making something that is going to solve this problem for people. But I know nothing more about it at this point, just that it's terribly exciting. Until then, we need a way to get something like an XYZR platform. This is a manual operated device that moves the top plate in very small increments, left and right, forward and backward, up and down, and round and round. That's the R. This has some height, but it doesn't have enough height to make up for all the stuff we've stacked on the camera side. So we're going to need something underneath this. And you need to think in terms of everything that you add to your rig is a possible weak link. Let's take, for example, you have this lovely XYZR thing from China, and you want to raise it up a little bit, and you're going to buy a lab lifter. Well, you discover there's one from China that only costs $9, so that's obviously the one that you get, and this is what you end up with. It's partially a lab lifter, partially a musical instrument, I think, a squeeze box, they call it. This thing wobbles and shakes, and I've lost the screw thing to it. It's just appalling, and I wouldn't put anything on that because for fear it would fall off. So this would be a weak link. This would set up vibrations. It might give you the height, but at what cost? At the cost of having something that is wobbling when you're taking pictures. This is actually exactly the same lab lifter that I modified by hammering it with a hammer and painting it, and it wobbles less. So it's not very good. There is a better solution, one that I use, and it's over on the other table. I'll get it. If you go to a hardware store that has the name Harbor in it, there's one in almost every town in the universe, I believe. You can buy one of these. It's not black; it's actually shiny. It's an anvil. It's what the Roadrunner would get squashed by during those documentaries that came on Saturday mornings. It's an anvil for jewelers, I think, who like to smash watches. I would guess it's the only thing I can think of. But this thing weighs probably 2 pounds and makes a fantastic stable base. And it will get, if you don't need much room, that's a great thing to use. If you've got any solid block of metal or wood that you can use to stack it up, so long as it's flat, that'll do too. But it's nice to have something you can change the height of. So a more expensive lab lifter is one way to go, or waiting for somebody to invent something radically better would be another way you could go. So when you put this stuff on your surface, you have to take into account not only vibrations and stability, but straightness. And I cannot overemphasize this. So I will go over to the other table so that I can emphasize more dramatically over there. We're going to say that, well, no, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll actually put the, oh, that's great. I just put that board down on my subject that I was getting ready to photograph. Okay, not to worry. If you're going to do something like this, find a way to secure these feet. I had some sticky pads on them, and during the move they got rubbed off. But just some sticky pads so that this doesn't slide is a good idea. I wouldn't use this until that was corrected. Then the base layer will be this piece of wood. Now, whether you attach it or leave it just by its own weight holding position, that's fine, so long as you know what you've done. If there's any chance that anybody's going to bump it, then you probably need to secure it. In this case, when I was using this earlier, I actually had this bolted to the wall and this glued to this, and then the wood I had on it was screwed in. So I do like to have it more secure. On this platform, it's not, because it's a demonstration platform. So the first thing you need to do is establish, you're going to use this as the center for everything. You're going to put a center line on this, and that center line needs to line up with every piece of equipment you put on it. So what I do is I'll get yourself a square or a ruler, something that and a pencil. A pencil's a good idea. Who stole my pencil? Well, there's nobody else here, so it must have been me. I've lost it already. Okay, not to worry. Now that it's very easy to find the midline. These pieces of wood and any prepared wood that you buy, there's my pencil, will have been dimensioned, cut to proper dimensions. But all you have to do is measure it, divide by 2, and then put a mark on the rail at the midline. It's not as important that it's on the midline as that the line is straight. Do you see what I'm saying? You could have it a little bit off to one side if you wanted some room up here for something, but it has to be parallel all the way down with the edge. I like to do it halfway, it just makes more sense. So this is a 300 millimeter wide thing, so 150 would be my middle. So you just put a mark on it and then do that a couple of times on the way down the board. Use a sharp pencil if you've got one. And then all you have to do is connect the dots. Now, there are fancier ways of doing this. Out in my workshop, I've got something that would line up a straight edge better than this. But this is one way of doing it. Once you've done it, check it. Check it again. Measure it 6 inches, 6 inches. You want to be absolutely sure and measure it all the way down. This line can be put on pretty heavily. If you don't want to mark up your nice board, use a piece of tape. Just make sure it is put on absolutely straight. And from that point on, everything that you put on top of this needs to be lined up, so that the point is, when your optical center is aligned with this line, your sensor is perpendicular to it. And anything that you photograph down here, you will know that if you position it flat, it will be perpendicular to the sensor. And that is how you can work with things like parallax as you start doing fancier photographs where you're photographing larger subjects and you need to keep things very flat. Okay, so I'm assuming that most people who are just getting started are going to be using a very simple setup, a reversed lens, a lens on extension, a macro lens, something like that. So you'll be starting out needing a fair amount of room. So what I recommend you do is, if you are going to put a rail on your original setup, which is the only thing that makes any sense to do because you'll immediately need it, then you need to consider the fact that most rails, if you're using a manual rail, most rails do not give you enough clearance for the knobs to mount it on your breadboard. Most of them are made to mount on a tripod, which is the worst place to put a macro rail, in my opinion. So it doesn't matter whether you're using an old man Frotto like this or something gorgeous like this Novaflex Castel M. You can see from this piece of wood that this is considerably higher than the base of the rail, very much made for a tripod. But we're not putting it on a tripod, we're putting it on a solid base. So how do we overcome that? Well, we need to put a riser underneath it. Now, the riser can be as simple as a block of wood with the midline marked like this, that we can screw the rail into so that our button hangs off the edge. That's one way to do it. If we're using an automated rail, I still think it's a good idea to put the automated rail on a base as well. I know I just finished saying we don't want to have the the rail and the camera too high off the ground. We don't. We want to keep the center of gravity low. But you can do that and get a little bit of a rise. With the Castell Micro, I called that the Micro. That's the M. This is the Micro. You have a motor that needs to clear the base too. So this would be a bit tall, but it would work. And you've got your center line marked on this already. And you could just attach this. I don't recommend that though, because I'm frequently changing my equipment. What I prefer to do is mount my my equipment, my bellows, my rails, everything like that on a quick release device so that I can quickly change them. So this actually, this riser, I still need it, but it becomes a permanent part of the rail. So this gets usually screwed in very thoroughly with some heavy duty screws. I'm going to show you an example of that because it also shows an interesting detail. I hope that this is still working. On this rail, or on this rig, I have two quick release plates, but my wooden board has a piece cut out of it. That is to allow the screw parts of the quick release clamp to be accessed without getting in the way of the base. So you need to think about those things too. In most cases, you should put the hardware on the table and see how it works. And I just showed you that thing with my phone, which wasn't turned on at the time. I'll do it again. I need somebody to come operate my cameras on these types of things. That's what I was showing you. This, and the fact that I cut this little, no, can you see that? Yeah, maybe. I've cut this little piece out so that the quick release clamps can be tightened and untightened. Oh, dearie me. I didn't do a very good job of cleaning this place up today for this, but boy, time was running out. Let me switch to the other camera. No, we'll leave it on that one for a minute. So whatever rail we're using, we need a riser. Put a midline on it and line those lines up. Put it in with some good heavy duty screws that will hold it securely to the base. Now, we've already talked about mounting a rail on this. That is where this thing comes in handy. Now, the way I like to do it is to have an extra layer of freedom. I'll put in a couple of quick release clamps. You can screw those directly into the midline. They then hold the rail with the bottom arc of Swiss. That means I can move my rail forward and backward, give me extra room. Normally it's going to sit right there on 2 or 3 quick release clamps. That way, when I get ready to add my Castell M to do some handheld, some manual focus stacking, all I have to do is loosen up the quick release plates that are going to be on the top of this and slide it on, and you're good to go. I don't like to directly screw things together because it makes them harder to get off. This would be kind of what it would look like so. So I could just slide this on and be ready to go. Put my camera on and I'm ready to shoot. So it is important that when you're setting this up, you're setting it up with a mind towards what is going to cause the least amount of vibration. And the least amount of vibration is going to be a low center of gravity, a solid base, things that are actually attached to one another and not allowed to rock back and forth, and put in a part of your room or your house that isn't going to vibrate. So we have now the camera set up in such a way that we can move it backwards and forwards over a great range. Let me show you what I mean by that great range. Let's say you add a bellows too. This adds a lot of height, is why I brought this out. I've got an example of a plate that I have used in the past. So this would be the base. The rail would go on this. The bellows the motorized rail would usually go on this, and then the bellows on top of that. So by the time you're done, your camera is now 14 inches off the table. So that's what you need to make a note of, so that you can start thinking about what you're going to do down here to get your specimen to the right height. One thing you can't do, at least not without a lot of trouble, is lower the specimen lower than the equipment that you've got. So I recommend, like you do in winter when you're putting on warm clothes, put on layers. If you layer the support for your specimen stand, then you can remove parts and lower it a little bit. If it's a solid block that's all connected, you're stuck and you have to raise the camera, and that's never a good idea. So you are now in a position where, with your rail and camera stable and secure and your subject at the right height, you're able to photograph it, but only if you have light. And light is the next thing. Before we get to that, though, a quick word about electronic rails. If you're using an electronic rail and you're planning to use it on your rig, from the very beginning, plan how you're going to lay it out, because you need to be able to access the controller quickly and easily. What I do, which is incredibly comfortable to work with, I use the Castell Micro, and my controller just gets mounted like this on a double bendy arm, and I can have it right in my face, like so that my camera's here and I can adjust everything about my stack from here. With the rail, of course, right here. It's very compact, very simple, very, very easy to use. By the way, those of you who saw my D850 bashing into the motor when I did the tutorial on the Castell Micro, this is what prevents that. The Platy M plate that goes on here lifts your D850 right over the motor. Fascinating invention, that. Okay, now, light. I think that there are as many ways to attach light and get light onto your subject as you can shake a stick at. I'm getting dings, which means I've probably done something to disconnect somebody. Let me have a look. Let me see. Where's the thing that... question. Did I buy the automated NovaFlex? You said you returned the one. I sure did. I will talk about that in just a few minutes. And Baconmeister, yes, it will contain one of those two, and other electronics as well. More to come. More to come. Just bear with me on that. Okay, so where was I? The lights. There are more ways to attach lights to this platform, but they have to be done with two main things in mind. Number one, to be successful in macro photography in the studio, you need to deliver light to your subject in a way that it doesn't know where the light is coming from. That is the refined wisdom of all my years of doing this. That is the secret of life, is you have to deliver light in such a way that the subject, were it sentient, would look back and see nothing but a wall of light. It would not see a hot spot from 3 flashes, or a hot spot from a Janslow light. It wouldn't see anything but a wall of light, because not only would the light be spread out, it would be diffused. And if you are building a rig and you are not thinking about how you're going to light the subject, don't bother building the rig, because you missed the point. The rig allows you to light the subject better. Now, to light a subject, you need to think of the subject as being the center at the very middle of a football. No, not a football. That's an egg-shaped thing over here. A soccer ball. It's at the very center. Now, if you cut that soccer ball in half, perpendicular to the sensor, you have half a soccer ball at the end of your lens. The whole surface of that soccer ball needs to be accessible to your lights. You need to be able to put a light anywhere on the surface of that imaginary hemisphere. You don't often, you won't very often need to put any light in front of that line, in other words, in front of the subject, because that will shine light back into your lens, which you don't want. So it's almost always going to be in the front, and you're almost always going to want to have a fairly acute angle so that you're not too close to that midline and letting light get back into the lens that way. So you need to set this up so that, number one, your lights can go where they need to go. Number two, that there will be room and a way to diffuse them. And number three, that you are not building this thing out of chrome-plated steel so that it reflects every glint back into the lens. So it's a good idea to think up front about painting your surfaces black or some other dark matte color so that they're non-reflective, but also to think about the way you're going to attach the lights. Now, there are so many ways to do it. I have a preference because it's the way I started doing it. I'm just comfortable with it. If you can, if you are handy enough that you can drill a hole in wood, and that hole be straight vertical, which requires either a drill press or a device that will hold the drill upright. Don't do it by hand, you'll never get it right. But drilling a hole most of the way through the board and then inserting a metal rod down in the hole, that works temporarily, but the wood will not hold this rod, and it'll move over time and it'll get wobbly and it'll eventually fall over and hurt something. So what I recommend doing is using the same kind of thing that I used in my original video on building the cage. The cage was built, by the way, in order to give you access to all of the points on that soccer ball so that you could get your lights in there. And it is one way of doing it. And it's actually a good way of doing it, but it's a lot of time and expense and trouble, and it doesn't add as many advantages as I thought. But more important, it adds one big disadvantage. I had never really appreciated just how much a PVC box vibrates. It's like a big tuning fork. So if I used one, I would brace it with some diagonals and fill the whole thing with lead shot like I did with mine. But an easier way is to make this open plan that I use. What I'll do is I'll drill a slightly bigger hole in the wood, and I'll take one of these things that are called nipples. Now I can say that on a family program because that's what they're called at the hardware store. So I just dropped one of my nipples. Hang on. There we go. So you can screw this into that slightly larger hole. Even put a little piece of glue on it, a little piece of what you might call it, wood glue or a Loctite or something, and screw it in flush with the wood of the table. You have to plan where you want to put them, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. But I like to use a curved line between the camera and the subject area. So you've got a kind of like a stadium arrangement. And then the rod will screw into, well, this one won't, but you can make it screw into this by cutting threads in this. You're saying, I don't want to cut threads. Then don't use one of these. Get one that's smooth on the inside and just use it as a receptacle to hold the rod. It'll just stop it from falling out and wiggling loose. I usually put 3 or 4 on either side so that I can move my rods around. And the rods, I just take mine out of broken printers. Every printer has multiple rods in it, and they're basically free if you get a printer. But if you don't want to do that either, you can buy them and you can have them made out of anything. I brought in all kinds of different rods from outside. This is a big, gigantic one that I actually bought and never use because I don't really need a light up there. But anyway, you can buy them if you want. You can also use more creative ways of attaching the lights. Maybe you've already bought some bendy arms. You've got bendy arms, and the problem is now, well, how do I fix the bendy arms onto this wooden base? Because I want to use my bendy arms because they're perfect for getting the light in there and I can move them around. Well, one of the things that you can do is take a piece of aluminum extrusion. It doesn't have to be the big kind, the small kind. I've got some somewhere, and you can just attach it to the wood, like so, and then use the clamps of your bendy arms. There are nuts that you can put in these channels, so that you can attach your bendy arm directly to the rail, and you can slide them back and forth so that your lights can move back and forth and be repositioned. Another thing you can do if you're really, really cheap is go to the local woodworking shop and buy some hardwood. This is purple heart, but you can get, or walnut actually, but you can get offcuts like this. And you can just literally screw these to your wooden base with 3 or 4 wood screws, and then put your clamps on the edges, and that will hold them also. One thing it doesn't do is give you enough height that your flash on a bendy arm can get on top of the subject. You need to be able to get on top of the subject. That's going to be important in composing shots. So it's always good to have at least one upright. Now, if you don't like drills, you're allergic to drills, they make table clamps that have a screw on the bottom and a kind of a C-shaped thing that goes on the table, and you screw it. Big tall ones, or you can buy just the base and add a pipe to it. I've done that too. And you can even put a little piece that's bent at the top, like a right angle, and that'll hold 3 flashes if you want it to. The key is that you need to be able to get the flash in there, but you need to be able to move it close and far from your subject everywhere on that football. And the reason you need to move it close is because you're going to be using low power, multiple flashes, hopefully. You might be using continuous light, in which case you still need to get the light to the same place. It still needs to be, you need to get it where you need it on that football. Diffusion is the next absolutely indispensable, crucial part of taking good photos in macro. Now, it is difficult to do because ideally you want 3 layers of diffusion. One in front of your flash or your continuous light, one in front of your subject, and one in between the two is ideal. Each layer further scatters the light, so that by the time the light gets to your subject, it's kind of like sunlight on an overcast day. It's coming from everywhere. It's not coming from a sun. You can't see a bright spot in the sky where the sun is. That's perfect diffusion, and that's why it's so good photographically to take pictures in those conditions. The way we do that is with layering of diffusion material. Now, another thing that is in the works, but I only just started drawing the things in 360 yesterday. I have come up with this thing that's going to be free, and everybody's allowed to print it if they want it. You know, I love to use a tunnel, a tunnel-shaped piece of diffusion material, which I just happen to have sticking to the window. So I love to put this over my subject. And all I do is I dangle it from a piece of sticky tape, and that does the trick. And then I have diffusion on the flashes. So all I need is an in-between layer of diffusion. And it causes a lot of people a lot of consternation, because it's very hard to get them both hanging in the right orientation. I am 3D printing some little brackets. They're little clamps that are shaped like this, like like a tunnel. And there are 2 of them, and they're connected with a rib down the back. But inside there are several little sticks that you'll put a thread through that will hold a second layer of diffusion inside the first. So you have a double tunnel. Separated by about 1.5 inches. So you've got 1, 2 layers, and this will just go on a bendy arm right down over your subject and hang there while you shoot from the front. it's going to revolutionize the diffusion for me, because I can do it all in one quick step. So if anybody's interested in that, I'll publish the drawings as soon as I make one and make sure it works. But I made one night before last with uh, thread and a sewing needle. I just sewed two pieces together so that one dangled underneath the other, and it worked perfectly. But it was very flimsy. So this, hopefully, these things will work better. And if you've got mylar, it's made for that. It's ideal for mylar, but good with vellum as well. So they are the chief considerations, but there are some secondary considerations that I have a few minutes left to talk about. One is that there are a couple of things that you can do to mess up your chances of getting good pictures in the studio. One of them is not thinking ahead when it comes to power. Now, I have become an absolute fan of using continuous power to my cameras. I didn't used to. I worried about putting dummy batteries in there. I bought several that didn't work, but now I have one for every camera, and I do not focus stack on batteries anymore. It's just too risky. You'll forget how long the battery's been in. You don't look at the thing, and your camera dies halfway through a stack. You know, you've just wasted half the morning. So I use a number of different brands. I mean, the brand doesn't seem to make much difference, but a dummy battery to continually power the flash. If anybody ever invents a reliable way to power miniature speed lights, MF12 size speed lights, continuously from mains power, well, they will be stupendously wealthy, because that is a problem that needs a solution. These um, buying AA batteries is for the birds. Another thing that I wouldn't recommend buying. Well, I shouldn't say that, should I? This is one of the flashes I use, and yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. This is a flash I would recommend you use. This is the MF12 that is one of three still standing. I bought, I think, 6 of them 2 years ago, and I use them. I probably fire them 1,500 times a day, every day. When I'm not taking pictures in the studio, I have them on my camera, and I don't shoot that many outside. But yeah, they're starting to look a little bit worse for wear, and they're still not dropping flashes, and that's when they'll be retired. But yeah, they do break, and the warranty isn't well, it's not a warranty. There is no warranty on these if you get the Godox ones from anybody but B&H. So yeah, you bear that in mind. So the key to flash or to light is small. You need small, and you need matched. So if you're thinking, well, I've got this Godox speed light and a Young Now speed light from a few years ago, and I've got a couple of LEDs, it probably isn't going to work. It might work for a while, but the problem with different brands of flashes, they synchronize differently. Sometimes they don't even fire at the same time, so you can have one popping before the other. That's bad. The colors can be different. They can look very different. The subject can look different on one side than the other. Not good. Mixing LEDs and flash is disastrous. It's impossible to get the light right, and it never looks good. Using just LEDs, I don't care for it. Some people do. You can use bendy arm LEDs. That's how I got started. For many years, that's all I used. Janslow lights from that Scandinavian place. And I loved them. They're flexible. You could put them everywhere. But I very soon discovered, well, not very soon, I eventually discovered that the, the difference between okay macro photography and good macro photography is how you light the subject, including how you diffuse the light. And I just couldn't make the LEDs give me the same results that flash do. And now that's really all I use. But there are other solutions, things like this. these tiny little panels. Small Rig makes a lovely one that I thoroughly enjoyed using this for a lot of different things. Macro not being one of them. It's very bright, very, very bright. But it's great for video and things like that. But if you are in a pinch and this is what you need to use, I know that Allison, our famous slime mold photographer, likes to use small cubes. What are they called? I can't remember. Ulanzi, I think. Little cubes for LED light in the field, and she wins the Nikon competition every year. So that you can't knock it if it's working. What else was I going to show you? Good heavens, I might have shown you just about everything. One other thing. This is a nice to have, not utterly vital, but worth thinking about. Have a place behind your rig. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Have a place back here, if possible. Is that camera even pointing at it? Not really. Let's see if we can make that a bit better. Yeah, it's a bit better. So we want to have something back here, and I usually recommend getting about 1.5 feet, 2 feet behind the subject, maybe even as much as 3. A wall is ideal, but if you don't have a wall there, just a cheap stand, a light stand with a grabber on the end of it, and maybe a couple of sheets of black velvet, or black, this is just black material, craft material, but it actually absorbs the light very well. I've got these in all different colors. Wrapping paper is good. It doesn't matter, just something, a place that you can put your background. And with that, you've pretty much got it covered. I would say that, again, it's not absolutely vital, but having a place that you can close off the light from the outside so you don't have to deal with ambient light. So curtains that you can close or blinds, lights that you can turn off, a place that you can get all the light that's on the subject is your light, is a good idea. None of this, except possibly the key pieces of equipment like the lenses you use and a good rail and possibly the positioning table. None of these things are very expensive, and the cheaper DIY kind of stuff is every bit as good as expensive solutions that you'd have to buy. So yeah, it's very doable, and I hate the thought that some people watch some of the more advanced videos we do and think, oh gee, that's just too involved and difficult. I'm not going to even get into that. There's not much to get into. When I started doing it, it was just very, very basic, but you can do it even quite nicely without spending just a ton of money. Listen, I know that I have not had the time to answer your questions. I am going to ask Alistair if he has the ability to do this, to just copy those questions into a document for me, and make sure that I know the email of the person who sent it. And if you would just send that to me, because I'm away from the office here and I can't copy anything myself. If you'd send that to me, I will respond to these questions that you've asked today. And if any of them are super interesting, I'll address them in the meeting on Tuesday. But we only have a minute left, and I probably have an announcement I'm supposed to tell you, but my mouth is getting dry from all that talking. What do you think of this wireless mic? Does it work? This was a shot in the dark. I'm amazed it worked at all. But yeah, it gave me the freedom to come back here, so that's not too bad. The Castell M video is out, and if you stick around to the very end of that, I make a fool of myself. So yeah, that's worth watching, if nothing else. What else do I have coming up? I don't know what's coming up. I am so yeah, I'm worn out. I haven't thought about what comes after this live stream, to be honest. I've been so busy. If you have ideas for the live stream, let me know what they are. And yeah, because we've got 2 next week, and yeah, and You need to tell me what you want to talk about, and we'll talk about it. And other than that, I'll see you Pazoomers on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Do come. We're going to have fun. If my computer is still back here, we might do something in the studio. Who knows? And yeah, I'll get your questions answered later today if we can work that out. So thanks for coming, and I will see you on Tuesday or Saturday or Thursday or some other day when I release another video. Till then, take care, stay safe, and be well. Have a good weekend. Cheers. Oh, don't forget that thumbs up thing if you liked it. 189 views. I should, yeah, that's good.